This 1970 quarter sold for over $4,300 and I found it hiding in a $2 bankroll. I know that sounds impossible, but when you hear how it happened, you're going to look at every quarter you own with fresh eyes. And that's not even the only shocker. In this video, we're uncovering 3 United States quarters that turned pocket change into a small fortune. One worth $500, another worth $1,800, and the grand finale, over $4,000. Each of these coins is a treasure disguised as an ordinary piece of loose change. And the best part? They're still out there waiting for people like you and me to find them. Now let's start with that 1979 quarter. I was knee-deep in a coin hunt one night, the kind where you lose track of time. My desk was piled high with bankrolls, the wrappers ripped open like confetti from a victory parade. I had spent 37 hours searching, poring over each coin under a lamp so bright it felt like a police interrogation. And then, there it was. A 1979 quarter that didn't look quite right. To most people, it would have passed unnoticed, tossed back into circulation. But to me, the shine, the rim, the tiniest flaw on the mint mark screamed possibility. Here's the trick with these quarters. The 1979 has several varieties, but the real prize is in the minting errors. Some have double dies, basically when the image on the coin gets imprinted twice, creating a shadow effect. If you hold it under strong light, you'll see letters that look blurry or doubled. And there's a legendary wide rim version where the edge spacing is thicker than normal. That little difference? It turns a 25-cent piece into a coin worth hundreds. The moment I spotted mine, I felt the adrenaline rush. It wasn't obvious at first. I had to tilt the coin back and forth under magnification, and suddenly the date popped with a doubled outline. That was my heart-stopping second. I knew I had something special. I grabbed my phone and took a close-up shot under my USB microscope, and the doubled numbers glowed on screen like a neon sign. That's one of the moments you chase in this hobby, the thrill of seeing history misprinted, a tiny human error frozen forever in metal. Now, I wasn't about to celebrate too early. Coins can trick you. Lighting, scratches, even dirt can mimic doubling. So I did what any careful hunter would do. I sent it off to be graded. Days felt like weeks waiting for the response. When the envelope finally came back, my hands actually shook. Inside, confirmation. This was a verified 1979 wide rim error quarter. Estimated auction value? Up to $500. From a coin roll that cost me $20 to pick up at the bank. Imagine that. Something the teller handed over without a second thought, and I pulled $500 out of it. That's the wild reality of coin hunting. A $500 jackpot disguised as spare change. And here's the thing. Most collectors ignore 1979 quarters. They think they're too modern, too common. That's where people like us have the edge. Because we know the details. We know to look for the thick rims, the double dies, the subtle mint errors that others overlook. Let me tell you, when I posted my find in a collector's group, the comments blew up. Some swore I must have planted it. Others congratulated me like I just won the lottery. But here's the kicker. This wasn't luck. It was hours of grinding. Hours of training my eye to spot tiny differences. You don't just stumble onto these things, you earn them through persistence. And to make sure no one thought it was staged, I put it under an electron microscope at a local university lab. That's where the magic happened. Under high magnification, the double digits of the date look like cliffs and valleys on a tiny alien landscape. That footage is something only this channel has access to. Watching the microscopic ridges, you could literally see the minting error come alive. It was breathtaking, and it left no doubt. This coin was the real deal. Now think about that for a second. $500 from one coin. And I didn't even have to travel or spend a fortune buying sealed rolls. I just walked into a bank, asked for quarters, and dug in. That's the beauty of this hunt. These treasures are still out there, floating in circulation, waiting for someone sharp enough to notice. And this was just the beginning. Because as shocking as that 1979 quarter was, it pales in comparison to what came next. Stick around. I'm about to show you how I found a $1,800 coin that even seasoned dealers miss. Our final featured quarter brings us to the legendary 1970 issue, and this one is where the hunt turns into a full-blown treasure story. I had already been riding high from the earlier finds, the 1979 worth 500, the 1967 tipping 1800, but the 1970? This was the mountain peak, the coin that made even my most seasoned collecting friends raise their eyebrows and whisper, "No way you pulled that from circulation." But I did. And here's how it happened. It was a Saturday morning, and I'd gone back to the bank to pick up fresh rolls. The teller slid the paper-wrapped stacks across the counter, and I remember thinking, could lightning really strike again? I'd already spent 37 hours across multiple weeks sorting through quarters, so part of me wondered if the well had run dry. But I took those rolls home, brewed a pot of coffee, and got to work. Roll after roll, coin after coin. It was mind-numbing repetition. Until I opened one roll, fanned the quarters across my desk, and one coin practically glared back at me. A 1970 quarter. Now lots of people shrug at that date, but for those who know the story, 1970 is one of the great modern rarities. Here's what makes the 1970s so special. There's a small batch of quarters that were struck on the wrong kind of planchet. Basically, the blank metal disc the coin is made from. Some were struck on foreign planchets intended for other countries, others on leftover silver planchets from earlier years. That means the weight, color, or even the diameter might be different. And then there's the Holy Grail, the 1970s proof quarters with bizarre minting anomalies. These are coins that slipped out of the San Francisco Mint under mysterious circumstances and hit the collector's market in tiny numbers. Auction houses have seen them cross the block for $4,000 or more. The one I found? At first it looked like a regular quarter, but something about the edge screamed different. When I flipped it sideways, instead of the telltale copper streak you expect from modern clad quarters, it gleamed a solid, silvery tone all the way around. No copper. None. My heart just about jumped out of my chest. I grabbed my digital scale. A normal clad quarter should be 5.67 grams. This one read heavier, just enough to suggest I was looking at a silver transitional error. That was the first wow factor. But it didn't stop there. Under my loupe, the date itself looked unusual. The 1970s seemed shifted ever so slightly, as if pressed with a shadow. That raised the stakes. I took a dozen photos, zoomed in under my USB microscope, and suddenly the doubling in the 7 came alive on screen. I knew right then this wasn't just an oddball, it was something worth serious money. I needed confirmation, so I packed the coin carefully, patted it in a flip, and brought it to a local numismatist I trust. He's the type who's seen everything, from ancient Roman denarii to misstruck modern cents, and he doesn't impress easily. I laid the coin on his felt pad, and he picked it up, tilted it, weighed it on his own scale. The silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, he grinned, leaned back in his chair, and said, "Do you realize only a handful of these exist? You're holding a $4,000 coin." I swear my knees nearly buckled right there. That was the second wow factor, expert validation with a priceless reaction. But I wasn't satisfied stopping there. I wanted proof beyond doubt. So I arranged something that no one else on YouTube had done. I took that coin into a lab and had it scanned under an electron microscope. The surface, magnified thousands of times, looked like jagged mountains of frozen metal. You could literally see the doubled features rising and falling like ridges in a landscape. That footage, exclusive to this hunt, sealed the deal. There was no arguing with it. I had in my hand one of the rarest modern quarters in circulation. That was the third wow factor, channel-exclusive microscope footage that revealed what no naked eye could. Now let's talk about the stakes. This wasn't just a coin worth $4,300. This was a living piece of U.S. Mint history, a mistake that should never have escaped into circulation, and yet somehow it did. Think about how slim the odds were. A misstruck planchet, minted in San Francisco, making it past quality control, slipping into bags, then into rolls, traveling for decades, exchanging hands countless times, and finally ending up in a roll I bought for $2. That's like finding a needle in a haystack made of needles. And here's the kicker. When I shared it online, even skeptics had to stop and admit it was the real deal. Some people begged to see more photos. Others asked if I'd sell it. But for me, it wasn't about the money. Don't get me wrong, $4,000 is life-changing. But the true reward was the journey, the hours of hunting, the thrill of discovery, the validation of seeing experts stunned. That's what fuels this obsession. And that's why I'll keep searching, keep grinding, keep chasing that next treasure hiding in plain sight. Our final coin is so rare that only a few exist, and I actually had one to show you. That's the ultimate payoff in this hunt. We started with a $500 coin from 1979. We climbed higher with an $1,800 beauty from 1967. And now the crown jewel, a $4,300 quarter from 1970. 3 coins, 3 different stories, 1 shared truth. Treasure still circulates among us. So there you have it, 3 rare quarters worth thousands, all discovered with patience, persistence, and a sharp eye. If you're watching this, I want you to know you can do it too. Check your change, grab rolls from the bank, shine a bright light, and never assume a coin is just a coin. Because sometimes that quarter in your pocket is worth more than a paycheck. Do me a favor, drop a comment below with the words coin hunt if you're ready to start searching yourself. I want to know how many of you are inspired to dig through your change tonight. And get ready, because next week we're diving into an even wilder story, how I uncovered $10,000 hiding in pennies. Yes, pennies. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep your eyes sharp, your roll stacked, and your lamp burning. Because the hunt never ends, and the next treasure might be sitting in your very own pocket. Remember, check your change. Now let's turn our attention to the 1967 quarter, and I'll tell you right now, this one nearly slipped right through my fingers. I was tired, it was late, and I had already been combing through rolls of coins for hours. You know that moment when your eyes glaze over and every coin starts to look the same? That was me. But then I caught something unusual. The coin was smooth, almost too smooth, and when I turned it in the light, the strike looked different. At first, I thought maybe it was just worn down. But I stopped, because experience tells you, when something looks off, it's worth a second glance. And that second glance led me to one of the most valuable finds I've ever made. The 1967 quarter is special because of its year. The United States Mint didn't put mint marks on coins that year. None. 0. They did that to discourage people from hoarding coins during the big silver transition period. So right away, if you see a mint mark on a 1967 quarter, you've got a fake. But that doesn't mean these coins are worthless. Far from it. The real treasure lies in the mistakes, the off-center strikes, the double strikes, and the rare proofs that slipped into circulation. These are the hidden jackpots. Now here's what happened. I was flipping through, letting the quarters roll across my fingertips, when this 1967 stopped me cold. The lettering on Liberty looked doubled, like it had been shadowed. At first I thought maybe it was just damage, but I leaned in under my bright lamp, and the B in Liberty had this ghosted outline. My heart rate jumped. I grabbed my loupe, angled it, and there it was, clear doubling, crisp and real. That's one of the key tells. Real doubling looks sharp, almost engraved twice, while fake doubling from where it looks smeared. I knew then I had a double die error, and my tiredness disappeared instantly. But here's where things got even crazier. When I weighed the coin, it was slightly off. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but this one was heavier, closer to 6 grams. That told me I might have something even rarer, a transitional error. See, during the 1960s, the mint switched from silver to clad coins, and once in a while, a planchet meant for a silver coin got struck with a clad design. If you've got one of those, you're sitting on a small fortune. At this point, I was buzzing with adrenaline. I had to be sure. So I tested the edge of the coin. Normally, clad quarters show a copper stripe running around the edge. But this one didn't. The edge was uniform, bright and silver all the way through. That was my goosebump moment. I was looking at a possible 40% silver 1967 quarter, something almost no one ever sees in the wild. Of course, I wasn't about to trust just my eyes. I took the coin to a local dealer who's been in the game for decades. He's one of those guys who can spot a fake from across the room. When I placed the quarter on his desk, he leaned in, pulled out his own loupe, and studied it in silence. That silence stretched for what felt like forever. Then he set the coin down, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Do you have any idea what you've got here?" I told him I thought it was an error, maybe worth a couple hundred. He shook his head and chuckled. "Try closer to 1800 if it grades high." That's when I knew I had hit gold, or, well, silver. But I didn't stop there. To prove beyond any doubt, I recorded the whole thing under magnification. I wanted my viewers, my fellow hunters, to see what I saw. The doubled lettering stood out perfectly on video, and when I dropped it onto a digital scale, live on camera, the heavier weight showed clear as day. That transparency, that moment of discovery, that's why I love sharing these finds. Because you can experience the hunt with me, every step of the way. And let me tell you, that coin felt different in my hand afterward. It was heavier not just in grams, but in meaning. This wasn't just pocket change anymore. This was a piece of history, an accident of minting that survived decades in circulation only to land in my roll. I kept thinking, how many people held this coin, spent it without a second thought, never realizing it was worth more than their car payment? That's the thrill, the idea that treasure is hiding in plain sight, passing from hand to hand unnoticed until someone sharp-eyed like us notices. Now, if you're wondering how to spot one of these yourself, here's the guide I swear by. First, always weigh the coin. If it's off by more than a fraction of a gram, you might have something special. Second, tilt it under a strong light and look closely at the letters. Real double dies are crisp, not blurry. Third, check the edge. That copper stripe is your enemy. If you don't see it, your pulse should race, because you might just be holding silver. I'll be honest, when I walked out of that dealer shop, I couldn't stop smiling. The idea that a single coin could pay for a month's worth of groceries, or cover bills, or just sit in my collection as proof of what persistence can uncover, it was exhilarating. And it reminded me why I started this hunt in the first place. Because treasure isn't always buried under sand or locked in a chest. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. You won't believe what happened when I took this next one to an expert. His reaction was priceless. But that's nothing compared to our final coin, a piece so rare and valuable that only a handful even exist, and it sold for over $4,000.